This is From Courtroom to Carline, the podcast where we discuss life as a lawyer and a parent.
I'm Jenna.
And I'm Rick.
Your hosts and partners both in the courtroom and in parenting.
Join us as we navigate the fascinating worlds of law and family life.
Now, this is not legal advice, but in every episode, From Courtroom to Carline is a delightful blend of legal insight and parenting hilarity.
Get ready for a roller coaster ride where law meets love and where the gavel meets the Carline. Welcome to another episode of From Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast. Today we've got Tim Sullivan on our show. He is a husband, dad, and DUI defense lawyer in Clearwater, Florida. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
So just a little bit of background about Tim. He's from upstate New York, from a little town called Horseheads. He moved down here to Florida in 2005 to attend Stetson University, where he then graduated, passed the bar, began working at the state attorney's office for a little over 3 years, and then went right into criminal defense work. And now, recently, he's opened up his own law firm. Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're located and where people can find you?
So the office is at 2380 Drew Street, which is in between 19 and Belcher, right next to the Phillies complex. Website is DUIStPetersburgLawyer.com.
Awesome. So I know, Tim, you're a big Notre Dame fan. So just after watching that game, there's been a lot of talk about a controversial defensive play call on 3rd and 10, 2 minutes left in the game. You got to make the stop or else the game is over. Notre Dame calls for the all-out blitz, and Ohio State's ready for it. They throw it up to one of the best wide receivers in the nation. He comes down with it. Game's over. Ohio State wins a championship. So you're in Marcus Freeman's position. Are you calling the all-out blitz in that scenario?
I'm not. I could tell you that I really thought that we were going to win that game. Courtney and I got a new dog right before the game and named her Rudy, that I really believed was going to be Notre Dame's secret weapon for the game. But Ohio State had been so successful all game long on 3rd down, and they'd been successful in running the ball, passing the ball. It really didn't matter. That I am of the opinion that in that scenario where a 1st down doesn't really kill you, but if you let them get in field goal range, that ends the game. So I think that they should have had safety over the top or something to cover number 4.
So what I was surprised with is how Ohio State was almost anticipating the blitz. You know, typically when you send that all-out blitz, you don't have enough time to throw a deep ball. You got to wait for the receiver to, break off the route. And it looked like, in looking at the corner, he was playing the inside slant, the quick slant, which is kind of a go-to play when you're in one-on-one coverage. But the wide receiver didn't run the slant. He ran the go route. And I think that was just a better play call by Ohio State.
Oh, for sure. And that wide receiver in the pregame coverage was saying things like, go ahead and cover me one-on-one. We'll see how it goes for you. And we found out.
But I didn't have a problem with the play call. I mean, at that point, you got to make the stop. You never know. You could get a sack. You could get a tip ball at the line of scrimmage. So I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was a great game. But, condolences, because I know that was a hard-fought game.
Yeah, this was, it was a cool season with the different playoff games. I mean, winning 2 big bowl games was a big deal for us, beating an SEC team, beating a Big Ten team. It was a great year. It was a great year to be a Notre Dame fan. My dad went to Penn State, so that game was particularly meaningful for me. I didn't care who won the game. It was just pretty cool that Notre Dame and Penn State were playing in such a big...
It's nice that you had the time to watch the game. Us having the 3 boys, I can never really sit down and watch a game from start to finish. So let's kind of shift gears and start talking more about how, you started your career and, what you do now to sort of balance that career with, the 2 girls that you're now raising with Courtney.
So my career, I would say, has been a series of unexpected opportunities that have converted into a pretty nice career. When I was in undergrad, I went to undergrad at a little school in Pennsylvania called Lycoming College. It's the home of Little League Baseball. And every freshman at Lycoming had to do a mandatory community service. And it just so happened we started in August. My mandatory community service was at the Little League World Series. And if you've never been there, the adults that volunteer at Little League are super serious about their job. And I got there. I'm like, what do you want me to do? And they said, we don't need you. Why don't you just sit down and watch the game? So I'm sitting there and there's this, couple that are in their 40s next to me, and I just start talking them up. And it turns out that they run a law firm in town. It's one of the biggest law firms in town. And they said, are you looking for any kind of part-time job? And that turned into me getting a job running errands for this law firm. My other friends are working at Wendy's and stuff like that in college, and I get this job at a law firm. And it was a great, great gig. They taught me how to do title searches for real estate transactions, and I worked there all 4 years. I then moved down to Florida and I did kind of, I don't know if they still do it, but I did law school in 2.5 years where you started in the summer and you did both summers. During the second summer that I was in town, one of my classmates had this law clerk position at a DUI defense law firm in town. And she had to go home for the summer and asked if I would fill in just for that summer. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. Worked really hard at that job, learned a lot about DUI, didn't know anything about DUI, had no desire to practice criminal law before that. Learned a lot from Frank Russo about running a business, marketing a business, all these different things. Stayed on with them during my entire law school career and really tried to follow the things that Frank Russo did. I went and worked at the state attorney's office. I got my stripes in trial. And then, 11 years later, I had my name on the door of that law firm. So it was just unexpected opportunities that led to a pretty neat career path, I think.
Right now, you focus primarily on DUI defense, and a lot of people and a lot of the things that we've read have, sort of emphasized niching down, specializing in one particular area. And so you've chosen DUI. Any particular reason why you chose that particular area, or is it just happened to kind of fall into your lap based on your experience there at the firm you just mentioned and what your experience was at the state attorney's office?
Well, I think at the beginning it was because there was an opportunity for it, because I knew someone in the field that was a mentor to me, that trained me. And of course, I became very close with Judge Overton during that time that taught me a lot about DUI. But I think as the years have gone on, it's really a special type of law to practice because there's no one type of person that gets a DUI. I've represented doctors, lawyers, tradespeople, airline pilots, professional athletes, and, a lot of regular people. And, some of them are just plain innocent. Some of them made a one-time mistake. Some of them have an addiction problem that need help. And there's a real opportunity for advocacy, not just legal advocacy, but personal advocacy, helping these people through a real problem. They're worried about losing their job, losing their kids, not being able to drive. And, I know that whenever I post anything on the internet, you get the automatic, well, they could just not drink and drive. But, these are real people with real problems. And I found it to be a very rewarding area to practice.
Yeah, I completely agree. You get to meet a lot of good people that, like you said, either have addiction problems or have a one-time mistake, completely innocent. In either scenario, I feel like us as defense attorneys can help them, not just in the courtroom, but sort of in life in general, because it affects their family, it affects their kids, it affects all the people around them. So, I try to take that approach and not just, talk to them about, hey, these are the ramifications in the courtroom, but these are the ramifications in your personal life, and these are the things that you're going to need to do so that, we don't ever have to meet again.
Right.
So.
And, I have found that when people call in, there are often two kinds of callers. They're the people that want to get on and off the phone in 5 minutes, that want to know how much it's going to cost them. And those are generally not the people that get me involved. And then there's people that want to talk to me for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Those are the clients that I want. And those are the people that generally get me involved, that gives us the opportunity to deep dive into what is their real concerns about this. What can I do to help? What can I do in the next 10 days, 15 days, 30 days? Is this a client that, because they've never been involved in any kind of court situation before, that I need to provide weekly updates? Is it someone who doesn't need that kind of hand-holding? So it's a practice area that is unlike anything else I've done, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy the people. And
How did your time at the firm where you got your name on the door prepare you to take that next step and make the decision to go off on your own and become a solo practitioner?
What you guys have done is really the hard way of doing this. You started from nothing. You didn't have a website, and now you've got a great website. I'm a big fan of your firm and your social media work. I had the benefit of learning to be a defense attorney where I didn't have to take any risks. I went out, there was already a firm established. They already had a phone number that a lot of people knew, and I could, learn to practice DUI defense at the beginning without having to shoulder all the weight of running a business, which is as you know, a tremendous amount of the weight. But over time, watching how my mentor did things, ran the business, ran it like a business, not a law firm that happened to be a business, marketed the business, treated marketing with the value that it has for any kind of business. It really prepared me to take over for him when he retired in 2017. And my former partner and I ran that firm for 7 years. It was successful. It wasn't a situation where I went out on my own because our former law firm wasn't successful. It was very successful. And I think that, learning the business side of things, learning all the accounting that goes into it, which is a tremendous amount to do that so that you're not bogged down with 100 emails about taxes in January, to do it right on the front end. It was very valuable. It was, like getting an MBA from having this job.
Is there anything that you're doing differently now at your own firm that you've got the freedom? So tell me, what sort of things are you doing differently?
The firm had been around since the 80s. And there were a lot of things that we did that you really couldn't explain why we were doing it other than, well, this is how we've always done it. I'm a big fan of Macs, and the firm always used Dell PCs. So the very first thing that I did was get rid of all of the PCs and all of our staff has Macs now. I absolutely loathe Microsoft products, specifically Outlook and the Outlook calendar. So we got rid of all of that, and now we use Google for everything. I read the book, The Client-Centered Law Firm, over the summer. Have you read this book? A personal injury attorney in Chicago. And we were we were up in New York on vacation at where my parents were. And I read this book, and it talked about, and it really hit home to me because it talks about how, you're dealing with people that don't know what's going on. They're scared. In the PI context, when am I going to get my check? I've been out of work, or whatever the case may be. And, the most valuable tool that we have in our toolbox as lawyers is communication. And it doesn't take talent to communicate. It doesn't take skill. It just takes effort. So one of the things that I started doing were these video messages to clients. And there've been a great response to my clients have really appreciated it. So I get done with court. I've got a very, high-powered video camera right in my pocket. I shoot a 30-second video and tell them what happened in court. And clients love it. And what I have found for my staff is that we're not getting calls, hey, what happened in court? What's going to happen next time in court? We don't get those calls anymore, which has helped the staff out as well.
That's very smart. And I can't think of anyone else that's doing that. So very creative and smart. So very cool. I'm going to take a hard turn because one of the things that you told us, one of the skills that you have as a dad is being able to explain third grade math. I have tried to help our oldest with his math homework. That's usually Jenna's job. And the biggest part about his homework is not getting the answer right, but showing your work. And I can't really explain it, verbally. I can do it, as everyone's been taught how to do math, I can do it on a piece of paper, but I can't verbally explain it. So why don't you tell our listeners, for all those that need help checking their youngins' math homeworks, how you do it?
I'm not sure what kind of textbook your kids use, but there's all these different phrases and stuff that just didn't exist when we were kids. I mean, 6 times 3 was 18 because 6 times 3 was 18 when we were kids. And now they're doing these things like drawing out little graphs and dividing it, and you can, double a known fact to get. And, I basically had to read through the part of the text that explains all these definitions just to learn what they're saying, to learn the language. But then I've been able to, make my own questions for Kayla and have her do questions that are not in the textbook. We do our own tests, we do our own quizzes. She's a real nerd like that. But for me, for my role in the parenting world, math is where I really hit my stride.
I am usually the one that gets our kids to sit down and do the homework. Rick, he'll try sometimes, but it's not really his strong suit. He'll read with them and, he'll try to pick up the slack, but for some reason they just have a easier time sitting down with me. So that's kind of where I've found, I can be that parent that does the schoolwork with them, but it is a struggle sometimes.
Yeah, Courtney really excels at doing the homework with our youngest. She's very patient with her, and the youngest, I think, has a little bit more of a temper tantrum when doing homework. Our oldest, I often will do the homework and check the homework with her. It just seems to me like there's so much more homework for a third grader than when we were kids. I mean, she's four weeknights a week she has homework. The only weeknight she doesn't have is Wednesdays. So it seems like a lot, but I think they're doing great.
That's our schedule too. The only day they don't have homework is Wednesdays. And I can't remember being in second grade, that's our oldest is in second, having that amount of homework at that early age.
Right.
It just seems strange. But I think one of the reasons why Jenna is more so doing the schoolwork with them is because we sort of set roles for each other. I'm the playful one that, hey, if you want to, have a good time, go play with dad, let's wrestle or whatever the case is. But when things need to get done, things are serious. All right, mom steps in. And so now when I try to take on that role, they don't really take me seriously. I've kind of dug this hole for myself, and now I've got to figure out a way to get out of it so that, hey, if there are going to be times where Jenna isn't going to be able to, get all the homework done with you, so you guys have to, do it with me. You may not like it, but, that's going to be what we have to do. So.
Yeah, one of the things that we've tried to do this year, now that I have the new office right by the school, is I set up an office in the office for the kids where they are supposed to come after school, and I have them 4 days a week after school and get their homework done in that 3:30 to 5:30 time, so that when we do get home, that we can spend more intentional time as a family and not just supervising their homework.
I love that. I remember when I was growing up, my mom, she worked at an accounting office, and she would pick me up from school. She'd take me to the office, and she'd set me up in a free office space, and it was great. I pretended like I was, a little employee working at the office. I got my homework done. I got to play on the computer, which was nice. So that's going to be a core memory that your girls have, getting to go to, work with dad.
Yeah, it's great. I love having them there, and they like the staff, and they will, when they get done with their homework, they'll color pictures for the girls in the office. So it's really nice to have them there. It's part of the reason why I moved in there.
So your wife is also an attorney. She's at the state attorney's office, and that's how you guys met, was when you were there. How is it being a dual attorney partnership?
I think that it really works well for us because when you're married to another attorney, you have an intimate understanding of what it takes to do the job, the schedule. From my perspective, I know that with the type of job that she has now, she's going to have weeks at a time, sometimes multiple weeks, where she's in trial. She needs to be out the door at 7:30 because it's some homicide trial that's going to go on for 2 weeks. And we just have to plan ahead and sketch. She has her whole trial schedule for the whole year already set up. And from her perspective, she knows that dad doesn't have a regular 9 to 5 job where after 5 o'clock and on the weekends, I can just shut off being a lawyer. Unfortunately, a lot of the calls for us come in after 7 o'clock or on Saturday or Sunday. And I think she really communicates to our kids that it's important that dad does these kinds of things at night and on the weekends, and that he's helping people. So I think that having that understanding of the needs of your spouse is valuable when it's another lawyer that can comprehend what's going on.
I totally agree. And I think also, too, what's made it easier for us is the judges know we're both attorneys, just like the judges know that, you and your wife are both attorneys. So they're very understanding when it comes to our kids are out of school or we have scheduling conflicts. So that's been helpful for us.
Sure, yeah. I've had a few instances where a judge tried to set a trial for me. And of course, on this side of things in private defense, we don't have nearly as many trials as you do at the state or the PD's office. But I always keep Courtney's trial schedule with me, and I'll tell, oh, judge, she's in trial that week, and that would really create a conflict. And I've never had a problem with the judges with that.
Yeah, I've definitely been impressed with the judges here in Pinellas County when it comes to our scheduling. They do seem to be understanding and in terms of our roles that, hey, yes, we've got, cases, but we've also got 3 kids, and it can be very difficult for both of us to be in court and then pick up the kids. So
It's amazing how many of our judges are two-lawyer families, though. There's a lot of them that are two-lawyer families. So
one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was sort of a side business that you started that was created kind of as a reaction to an experience that you and Courtney had during the birth of your first child. So, you don't have to go into too many details, but I do think it is very interesting to hear that and then how you kind of turn that into a positive that eventually became very successful.
I was very naive about what giving birth was actually like. I expected I would show up, that she would do a great majority of the work, and that I would pose for a few pictures. And I remember paying attention really well in the parenting CPR class, but all of the other things, changing diapers, didn't really pay attention to those things. When we had our first, things went south. She had to have an emergency C-section. Ultimately, there were more medical complications. She ultimately had to have a hysterectomy. So she would not be able to carry another child for us. And when she woke up, she was in the ICU. And I remember one of the first things she said was, did I keep my ovaries? And of course, at the time, I didn't think about the significance of that. I was just happy that she was breathing. And for a long time after we got through that, we had our oldest at home. We really just, kind of came to terms with the idea that we were probably going to be a one-child family. It wasn't what we always dreamed for ourselves, but that was the reality of the situation. Then we were out in Texas. I had a work thing out in Texas. And one time we were at a dinner and we just got talking about, well, what if? What if we tried this, like Phoebe from Friends, gestational surrogacy to have another child? We have all the equipment to do that. And we started investigating it, researching it. It's not an inexpensive process to go through. So getting our finances in order so that we could do it the right way. And ultimately, we went through all the steps and had a second child through gestational surrogacy. So basically, our bun, someone else's oven. She's biologically our child. It's just she was carried by another woman. When we went through that process, there's all these different people involved. There was multiple lawyers involved. There was an agency that connected us with the surrogate. There were obviously fertility doctors and all that kind of thing. There was one provider that I really had a problem with, and that was the escrow agent, who happened to be a lawyer as well, although you wouldn't necessarily need to be a lawyer to do the job. But this was, 2017, 2018, everything was online, yet we didn't have any real-time data about what the status of our account was. They were using paper checks. There were all these things that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And we got to 1 month before our daughter was going to be born, and they sent us an email saying that we needed to make a large deposit into the escrow account, something that was not part of the agreement, but because of the circumstances and how things went, we just needed to have more money in the account. Now, thank God we had it. We were able to do it. There wasn't a problem. But, I can't imagine the stress of a family that, scraped together every nickel to do this, and there was no notice that was given. So, Courtney and I talked about it, and I said I could do this much better than these people do it. So I started a company called My Surrogacy Escrow. made a website, contacted different surrogacy agencies, explained what I was doing, that I was using an app that we had made, that I was doing everything online, that payments to the gestational surrogates weren't going to take 3 days to go through the mail, that everything would be digital ACH transfers. And it was a very successful business model, and things picked up. We were helping families from all over the world have children. A lot of, international families would have surrogates in the United States, and we'd be helping these couples from all over the world. And it was super rewarding. I mean, helping other people go through what we went through, all different kinds of stories, whether they were older and had just been unlucky in conceiving, or certain families had gone through what we'd gone through medically, same-sex couples, that kind of thing. There were all kinds of different stories. But during COVID, the business had grown. And during COVID, a competitor approached me about buying out the business. And the offer was such that I just couldn't say no. I was at a point where, of course, the law practice had been growing. And, there's only so many hours in the day. And I had to, put a value on what am I sacrificing by running this second business. So I sold that business, and they've done a good job continuing it on. But it was a neat experience for a few years.
That is definitely a phenomenal experience that you got to have, and we thank you for sharing that with us. And Tim, it has been amazing having you on the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Yes, it's very, like you said, rewarding to have started that and met so many people, helped so many people, especially when you're already helping people, navigate the legal, process. Now you switch gears and you help people navigate, issues like fertility and surrogacy, and knowing that it is something that can be done, and done the right way, and done in a fulfilling way. So, I'm sure that had to be very rewarding. And so again, thank you for coming on the podcast. I think what we're going to do now is a transition to our What Happened to Florida Man segment. So we're going to take a quick break and be right back. So we're ready to do our What Happened to Florida Man segment. We're going to keep it local here in St. Pete. This happened a couple of years ago down by the pier. There's a gentleman that was selling hot dogs, and it was getting to be about midnight, which is the time when St. Pete usually shuts everything down, including the street vendors. On this particular night, the vendor was not wanting to shut down, wanted to keep running his business, and maybe it was a busy night. When he refused to do that, despite the cops' orders to shut it down, he took a hot dog and threw it at the police officer, which, if you touch someone against their will, and that person is a police officer, and they're a police officer, that's considered battery against law enforcement, and it's a felony charge. So what happened to Florida Man? In a couple of weeks, the state attorney decided not to file charges. He didn't even have to hire a lawyer. They just decided, I'm not going to file these charges. So, Tim, I wanted to kind of get your perspective. Do you think that was the right outcome in this case?
I think it was. I think that it shows the independence of the state attorney's office, that ultimately they not only look at whether or not a charge could be proven, whether there's the technical elements of the offense, but whether it's the type of offense that should be prosecuted. And I think that was a good exercise of prosecutorial discretion.
And I think that it also shows sometimes law enforcement officers, in the heat of the moment, they're upset. They're just trying to control the situation. They make an arrest. But then when they go to invest and the prosecutor asks them, what do you want to do with this case? I think a lot of them will say, you know what, you don't have to file on this case. It's not a big deal. And they've had some time to cool off. So, I think the officers have discretion when it comes to, and have input when it comes to whether or not the charges are filed as well, for sure. So interesting Florida Man segment, but again, thank you, Tim, for joining us on the podcast.
Tell our listeners one more time where they can find you.
Yep. So it's the loss of Timothy Sullivan. The address is 2380 True Street in Clearwater. The website is dycpetersburglawyer.com, and the phone number is 727-855-DUIs.
Thank you, Tim.
Fantastic. All right. So that's been another episode from Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast.